And we're live. What's up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Matthew Bellman, Ryan Kostrowski here representing the DFS 5-pack, ready to continue our 2020 fantasy football talk here on Cinco de Mayo. Obviously, this stuff's coming out way early with still 4 months to go until the season starts, but with the rumor mill kind of starting to percolate that baseball season should start in July. It sounds like they got that on pretty good authority. I'm feeling more and more confident in the football season going off without a hitch.
Yeah, I'm hopeful at least. Again, I don't know, but I'm very hopeful. The more you keep saying it, the more hopeful I am.
You know, I'm a positive person, man, all about optimism and looking forward about what can go better. So I'm thinking we're going to get our football season going off without a hitch. Even if that means no fans, I don't care. Just give me the games, baby. I want to play some DFS and some fantasy football. Before we get into today's character we're going to chat about, please subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications. Thumbs up is always appreciated. And let's jump right in.
Let's get this, man. This is a good one. I actually just wrote down the next player I want to talk about, who I have similar feelings about, is David Johnson. We'll get to that later, though. I'm intrigued and interested to hear what your take is about DJ this year on a new squad.
I think he's an interesting guy to talk over, right? I mean, clearly this guy, used to be the number one overall pick, but he's been pretty much a no-show for a couple of seasons due to injury and just not being productive.
Just not being good. Like, I'm going to just come out and say I really like him a lot this year, and I like the spot he's in. But there's a big chance, like a big chance. I don't know how big of a chance, that he's just not good anymore. We know that running backs, once they lose a little bit in the NFL, I mean, that's it. And he looks like he's lost more than a little bit. Now, that's not to say he couldn't have, a really good offseason and be really determined and have another good year in him. And I guarantee you that Bill O'Brien is going to want to make him look good this year because he's getting so much heat for that trade.
I have to imagine he gets every opportunity to be the bell cow back here, right? Like, you're right. I agree with you 100%. You've been a Bill O'Brien hater forever. This offseason obviously didn't help you think about him in any more of a positive light. But I'm with you 1,000% on this one. You have to assume he desperately wants David Johnson to be good.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a natural conclusion. And I think if he's healthy, then he's in line for a real good year. I think he's a very boomer bust option in even year-long fantasy, because I could see him being really, really good. I could also see him clearly being not good.
All right, so we said we're going to cover some of the basics in every one of these players that we talked through. Coaching status, it's a new team, so it's not, in a sense, obviously it's a brand new coaching coordinator, but everybody out there listens and knows he's gone to a new team, so we don't really know what to expect out of him in this system with this team because it's brand new to everybody. As far as injury concerns go, he had a weird second half of the season, right? Like he was outperformed and outplayed by the backup running backs. They traded for Kenyon Drake, and it didn't really seem like he wasn't healthy. He just kind of fell out of favor. Did you look at this differently?
No, I mean, he just looked unproductive. Now, I don't think that he's been like 100% healthy for the past couple of years, it seems, but maybe that's just giving him the benefit of the doubt for not being good.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, again, we see this one eye to eye. There was no major injury last year that we really need to take into account when we evaluate him for this season.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay. So statistically, we want to talk about what we've seen out of him. And again, if we go back to 2016, and this was a question I was about to ask you, but I missed on. How many times can you remember a running back not being productive for 3 years and then all of a sudden being productive again?
Not many, man.
It's a small list. And, you got to give him 2017. He had a major injury. I won't hold that against him. Football players and running backs especially, they're going to get injured. I don't take that away from him, but we haven't seen him be good since then. I mean, he played all 16 games in 2018, and he was not good. Now, you can blame the offensive line. You can blame you can blame the guys around him. And I do think it makes a lot of sense to bring those things into the equation. But in 16 games on 258 carries, he didn't reach 1,000 yards. He only scored 7 touchdowns. He averaged a very, I won't even call it pedestrian, a bad 3.6 yards per carry. He did get his touches in the passing game with 50 catches for 446 and 3 touchdowns. Not bad. Nice to add that in there. And then last season, 3.7 yards per carry again in 9 games that he started. He was just not good when given the ball.
Yeah. I mean, there's red flags all over here. Like, it just makes you really question why they made this deal. Like, I can't even believe it. I don't know. They got to know more than us, right? Like, that's why you have to believe that.
Well, I don't know. Does Bill O'Brien know more than us?
I'd hope so. I would definitely hope
You would
so.
think so, but he might be the one coach I know you'd be willing to bet that a good DFS player might be smarter than him.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. He seems out of his element here. This trade just looks awful, especially when you look at the numbers a little bit deeper. You know, you can't blame him for the 2017 season, but he still hasn't been good since 2016. Like, that's just a fact.
His rookie year in 2015, who was the guy getting most of the touches that year? I'm just trying to remember. I mean,
let me check it out.
Like Edgerrin James keeps popping in my head, but I feel like that timeline doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think that was before that, but
that's what I thought too. But that's the guy who keeps coming to my mind, and that's why I want you to look it up.
I'm gonna look it up right now.
Because I do remember DJ was more productive, but I feel like there was a guy getting a lot more touches than him. Is kind of more of like a bell cow type of player.
Not Andre Ellington.
Okay, it was kind of a mixed bag.
Yeah, kind of just a mixed bag. Andre Ellington, David Johnson, Stephon Taylor, Kerwin Williams.
All right, never mind then. Okay, I'm misremembering something, probably something from a few more years ago. Maybe it was another year where Edgerrin James got too many carries for how unproductive he was. So, again, that's not really the point for this one. The main thing that I want to talk about when we look at how he played last season, he started 9 games. The 3.7 yards per carry, when people start blaming the guys around him and the team and Kyler Murray's rookie year, both Chase Edmonds and Kenyon Drake were wildly more productive in the same system.
Yes, that's more red flags.
Right?
I came into this
4.6 yards per carry, and Drake was 5.2, I think.
I came into this video thinking that David Johnson is a potential sleeper, and I'm interested in his upside, and that still is the case. But after looking at this deeper, I think that he still might be overvalued.
Right, and now again, where he's being ranked on fantasy football rankings right now, I think he's got a big opportunity to move up in a lot of people's eyes. And again, it only takes one. It takes that one kind of novice player in your league that remembers his name to draft him in the 2nd or 3rd round for it to be different than like where he's being ranked right now in the 4th round, 5th round, 6th round, for example.
Agreed.
So, okay. Kind of moving down past some of the statistics we've kind of talked over. Again, it's not crazy to think he's good again. Maybe he just hasn't gotten a chance. Maybe he's healthier. As far as 28, 29-year-old running backs go, he doesn't have a lot of tread on the tires. He's never had over 300 carries in a season. He's only topped 126 twice.
That's true. So it's not crazy to think he's got a good year in him.
So looking at what the Texans did in the offseason, clearly moving the ultra-talented and productive wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins in exchange for David Johnson is kind of the big one. It's what we're talking about right here. But from the wide receiver perspective, they signed Brandon Cooks. They signed Randall Cobb. They still have Will Fuller. What is your thought process on this receiving crew right now?
I don't know, man. It's another crew that has a lot of upside and I think it's very boom or bust. I think that Houston is going to be better than people think, though. They have the one thing I'll say about Bill O'Brien is they've made the playoffs like consistently, and they have Deshaun Watson, but even without him at quarterback, they were still like a playoff team. I think they're going to be better than people think. I'm not sure how like spectacular their offense is going to be, though.
Right, like I love Deshaun Watson. I think the kid's a stud. I think that's the one thing that you definitely have is kind of the equalizing factor right there. You do have a legit stud quarterback.
Yes, for sure. Sorry to interrupt you, but Randall Cobb is like nothing at this point. That's another move that I really question. They overpaid him. It reminds me of the Bears signing Jimmy Graham.
Yeah, I like Cobb better than I like Graham, but I don't disagree with the sentiments on that one at all. Brandon Cooks is like one concussion away from having to retire. And so while if he can be himself, we've seen him be wildly productive. He has all the makings of a good wide receiver whose career just isn't going to last very long.
Yeah, like if all of them stay healthy, I mean, I'm interested to see Fuller in the number 1 role. I think that, he's a guy we'll talk about on a video. Like, I think that he's a big X factor for me because if he can be really good, then it'll open up for if he can be healthy and really good, it'll open up everything else.
Yeah, I think everybody in the fantasy football and the NFL world agrees. Will Fuller's good, but if you're not playing and you're always hurt, how good are you? You mean like you're talented and you're productive when you're out there, but you can't count on him in the slightest.
Agreed.
And Brandon Cooks, we've already mentioned, he's got severe injury issues. And what happens if, because ultimately, who wouldn't bet good money that Will Fuller is going to miss time?
I would bet good money on that.
Right, we all would. If somebody said, I will bet you $20, $100, $5,000, depending on who you're talking to, that Will Fuller will miss at least 2 games, I think everybody who's a betting person is going to take that bet.
I agree.
And if I said at least 4 games, I still think most people are taking that bet because it's all that we've ever seen. So ultimately, if Fuller's hurt and Cooks just isn't the guy, like we saw is clearly a dip in production last year. He fell as like the number 3 wide receiver on that Rams team, which, didn't have their best season at all. I mean, if Cooks isn't there and Cobb's a shell of himself, this team all of a sudden becomes pretty bleak offensively.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a lot of question marks like all over.
Yeah, it's a lot more name than it is quality at the wide receiver position, at least in my eyes.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Like if this was 2017, good wide receivers, but it's not. Lamar Miller, they did not re-sign him. He is currently a free agent. You think there's any possibility that if Lamar Miller sits there unsigned and David Johnson doesn't wow in training camp, that they bring him back to be, the second or third running back?
No,
okay.
Not after they traded Hopkins for Johnson. They still have Duke Johnson.
Yep. So you still got your pass catching running back, which is another reason. David Johnson gets a lot of his value from his ability to be productive within the passing offense. But I mean, is there any reason to believe he's more productive as a pass catcher right now than Duke Johnson?
No, but he'll get more of a chance because they just traded Hopkins for him.
Okay. I don't disagree with you at all. In fact, I'd say I agree with you on that one. So I think that is the best thing David Johnson has working for him this season is the fact that Bill O'Brien really needs him to play well. Now, I don't know much about how his contract is structured, but I know he's paying an absorbent amount of money for a running back right now. If he looks terrible, you think there's any chance they move on from him before the season starts?
No, because they're committed. They just traded Hopkins for him. They can't take that look, publicity. Like they can't admit. Bill O'Brien would never admit that. It would have to take like a whole house,
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. And the only reason I think that's even possibility is because he's being paid a ton of money for a running back. And if they don't think he's worth it, I don't know how
they're already locked in for this year, though. That was the point of the trade. Yeah. It was like if it didn't happen like by that date or something, like Arizona was going to cut him and like whatever with the salary. It's complicated, the salary cap.
Okay, I didn't look into it at all, so I'll take your word on it. And I'm assuming you're usually up on these things, so I will assume you're right. So it's not really necessarily a factor. Although if he doesn't look good in training camp and he's just a guy, I mean, there is possibilities that he gets into a timeshare or something like that. So it's one you're going to want to monitor throughout the preseason.
Sure. The other thing I'll say to you, though, is I don't know how much of a training camp we're going to have this year. We'll have one, but it won't be like, it's not going to be as – I don't think it's going to be a training camp like we've seen in the past. That's for sure. So he's going to have less chance to look bad. That's all I'll say.
Although, I mean, if baseball's rocking July 1st and things are good to go, I have to assume that maybe the public won't be there as much, but we'll still get our players and get a good idea of what they're doing.
Yeah, I think it's up in the air, so hopefully.
Yeah. There's no reason to pontificate and ponder that one any longer, right?
Great.
So I looked him up this morning, and, once you move past like round 2, rankings and where people go, 35th and 55th, I don't see as big of a difference in those players as you do as second overall and 22nd overall.
Yeah, I agree. Man, there's still like, I'm not sure how to feel about David Johnson here. I think that there's so much, he's either, I don't think he's going to be like a 40 to 65 type guy. I think you're either going to see him like much better than that or much lower than that. Do you agree?
I don't disagree with you at all. Like you think, so I have 2 ways of looking at David Johnson this year, which is kind of why I wanted to talk him out for you and at least get the thought process percolating for those of you out there thinking about him this season. He's in a position with the number of touches that he could get on an offense that if the receivers play at their best level would be pretty good with a really good quarterback, that you could see him with round 2, potentially round 1 type of potential.
For sure.
However, having watched him the last couple of years, the eye test and really the numbers that go along with it, He don't look like a dude
So
that's going to be the type 2 production, and I'm with you. I think there's possibilities that if he's just not very good, maybe he just starts losing run, and they start looking at younger guys or whoever it is.
when you think about the running backs and how they're viewed in the NFL, it just makes this trade even crazier. So we talk about this a lot. In the NFL, DFS, especially year-long, it's more about opportunity than talent. And it's there for David Johnson. They just traded DeAndre Hopkins for him. The problem is, he just might not be any good anymore. Like, he has been so bad recently that he might just, it gets to a point where even if you're given the opportunity, you can still be bad.
Right? Like, you can give me 20 touches a game, but I'm a almost 40-year-old guy who hasn't taken a snap in 24 years. Doesn't mean I'm going to be good because I suck, right? Like, that's just how good are you? And then you start wondering, you talked about it, how good is he? Think about Jamal Williams from the Green Bay Packers. Would you not view him as a very mediocre running back?
Yeah, I think he's very fine. Mediocre is a bad word for it, but I think he's, average.
Yeah, very, very, very average. I mean, is David Johnson better than him right now?
I mean, I don't know. He definitely has more. I think he has more upside because he's done it in the past. I get the point of your question, and I can't say for sure either way.
If Jamal Williams all of a sudden took over this role for the Texans and was guaranteed to get 20 to 25 touches a game through the passing game and the running game, I have pretty good confidence that he would give you about 3.8, 3.9 yards per carry. He would be okay, really not move the needle a lot. He'd get his catches in the passing game. That's my guess on what we expect out of David Johnson, if I had to take a best guess. But he's an interesting character this year, to say the least.
Yeah, he is. He's one of the biggest question marks in year-long leagues, in my opinion.
I don't like him. I don't expect him to play well this year. But
he's not your type of guy.
What's that?
He's not your type of guy.
He's not, but strategically, if you're sitting there in round 5 and you got a running back who's going to be given every opportunity to get 20-plus touches a game, it's a great place to be, even if he's not that good.
So that's where the question comes, do you take him or do you take a quarterback?
And it depends on what you did with running backs. I also think because of his name, because of the fact that he's won people fantasy football championships in the past, because people know that he's going to be in a spot to get a ton of touches, even if he's still, being projected and people are talking about him as a 4th or 5th round guy in a month or two. I struggle not to see one guy in your draft liking him and going early.
I agree. I mean, I just 100% agree.
I feel like you were looking for a saying earlier that now that I'm having trouble conjuring it up, but it's perception is reality. And there are people that are going to perceive him to be a stud running back still.
This is very, very true. Good point.
I think you're going to have to really like him to get him. And I think his ADP continues to go up. Now, there's this one clown on Instagram, I've told you his name before, who still talks about how David Johnson got robbed of opportunities last year. And that, the coaching staff was dumb to look at Kenyon Drake and Chase Edmonds. But clearly, with David Johnson supplying 3.7 yards per carry, Edmonds 4.6, and Kenyon Drake, who was really good, averaging a full 1.5 yards carry better. I mean, it just seems like that was the right move. And they were clearly ready to move on from him, so didn't want him to get hurt. They got great trade value out of him, so clearly that was a genius move.
Yeah. I mean, as much as the move for Houston was stupid, it was genius for Arizona.
I mean, Arizona. DeAndre Hopkins is a flat-out stud. I mean, that's unarguable.
He is a stud. I mean, he's one of the best offensive players in football.
I've never, and this is me, I'm 39 years old. I've been watching NFL Sundays now for a little over 3 decades, and where you watch all day, every single time. I cannot remember a wide receiver with better hands that I'd rather throw it to if they were covered than DeAndre Hopkins. He's incredible.
He's incredible. He's one of my favorite players. It's remarkable that, Houston, he's probably the best player in Houston's history. You got defensive J.J. Watt.
Yeah, I'd say J.J. Watt, best offensive player.
Yeah, he's right up there for sure.
because we talked about Andre Johnson a couple of weeks ago. Andre Johnson probably had a slightly better career for the Texans because of just, longevity. But I do think Hopkins is just a subtle little bit better than him. And I'm a big Andre Johnson fan.
Same. But Andre Johnson, I like how you said he's a little bit better because Andre Johnson is up there.
Yeah, Andre Johnson was good. I'm an Andre Johnson fan. So, I look at, Andre Johnson as being like a 9.1 on a scale of 10. And then I look at, DeAndre Hopkins as, a 9.2, 9.3. They're both really, really good. I just think Hopkins is a smidge better.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. They're definitely both, in between 9 and 10s for me also. Maybe, right there, 9.3 and 9.4. Andre Johnson I loved him in fantasy too. It's funny how Houston just went from elite number ones that I guess we both just loved.
Yeah, I'm a big Hopkins guy and a big Johnson guy, so I like both of them right here. So ultimately, my final thoughts on David Johnson.
It's funny, just because we're talking about Andre Johnson, the Dynasty League I've been telling you about that I asked you about a couple times. This will show you how many years it's been. My first overall pick in that league was 6th overall that year, and it was Andre Johnson. I took Andre Johnson.
Oh man, that's seems like forever ago, doesn't it? I was in my first keeper league ever, which had to be 15, 16, 17, 18 years ago, redrafted. And I remember having Andre Johnson on that team as well. And I forget who my running back was to go along with. It doesn't matter. But again, ultimately, when it comes down to David Johnson this year, I don't expect him to be good. But I completely understand anybody drafting him and even reaching for him, because if he's still going in rounds 4 and 5, man, the opportunity right there for a guy that they are going to force feed the ball.
He is my type of pick, because if you draft him in round 5 and he is, turns out that he's healthy and motivated and has a good year, you have tremendous upside there. That's a league-winning type pick. On the flip side, why you don't like him is that he could ruin your season by wasting a pick that high.
I mean, it's how high is he going too, right? I feel this is the one that's going to develop over the next couple of months. And I could see him moving from where he's projected right now to people telling you, get him in the 2nd and 3rd round.
Agreed.
So where is he going? If you can get this cat in round 4 and round 5, I get it. That makes a lot of sense. The opportunity is there. I think the top thing that we talked about in this entire show was Bill O'Brien is going to want him to play well this year. He's got a lot hitched to him, very similar to now the Packers, front office has so much hitched to Jordan Love.
Yeah, but David Johnson's the immediate future. Jordan Love could still flame out. David Johnson's going to be given the opportunity this year.
This year, exactly. But he's really hitched his wagon to him. And if David Johnson plays terrible, and again, by week 4, they're not even giving him the ball anymore, I mean, that's a real bad look in Houston.
Awful look. That's the type of thing that'll get you fired. That's why he can't just move on from him, because that's the type of move that'll get you fired. You dealt Hopkins, you took so much heat for it, then you're going to just get rid of the guy. Can't do it.
And it's human nature. I forget what I was watching last night that actually made me think of something we can compare this to in real life. But it's human nature. When you make a mistake, instead of just immediately admitting you made a mistake and apologizing and trying to move on from it, you dig in your heels, you get stubborn, and you want to prove that you're right. And that is a problem with most of us as humans. We've all done it in some shape, way, or form in our lives. And you definitely get the feeling that Bill O'Brien this year will ride and die with this mistake.
That's a great point, man. Again, so to even answer your questions, yes, I agree with you 100% there. He has no choice. You just said it best. He's hitched his wagons to David Johnson. That's just what it is. If David Johnson is a bust, it could very well be his job.
Right, and it's not even so much that it's because David Johnson's a bust. It's because he got rid of Hopkins, and this is what he got back.
Right, exactly. And, we're talking about this. Everyone's been talking about this. When you hear ESPN talk about it, I mean, they laugh when they ask them about the trade. Houston and the ownership, and they know that too. There's definitely an eye on this. You know what I mean?
Right. This is one, everybody knows you got fleeced. Now, if David Johnson balls like it's 3 or 4 years ago, and let's say DeAndre Hopkins is unproductive with Kyler Murray, you can look like a genius. It just was such a rough bet to make. We made the DFS comparison last week. When there's a guy in his crush spot, and everybody knows it, and he's going to be 80, 90% owned, but you dig in your heels, the guy who's 1 or 2% owned. If you're right, you look like a genius. But when you're wrong, you look so much worse because everybody already told you were wrong all day long.
Well, I think the bigger point is that Bill O'Brien has a really bad history of this type of stuff.
Right?
So I don't think he deserves the benefit of the doubt.
No, he doesn't. I would agree with you 1,000% on that one. He doesn't deserve the benefit of the doubt. He's got a small opportunity to look like a genius, but if I had to bet on that coming true, you'd have to give me some really good odds.
Yeah, like he could look like a genius. You're right. I mean, but it's just unlikely. And the other thing is, man, like even if he does look really good, it's still a running back. You don't think another running back could have been productive if David Johnson is? David Johnson's going to have to be like awesome for him to really look like a genius,
Yeah,
I don't see any way he looks like a genius, to be honest. I think that there's a way he could look not as bad.
well, he could look like a genius, but it would have to. You're calling for something that I can't even see happening, and that is David Johnson looking like LaDainian Tomlinson and DeAndre Hopkins looking like Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Which this is not something I'm willing to put any money on, even with any kind of odds.
Right, I agree with you. It could. I mean, yeah, it's no, but I agree with you. Yeah.
Hey, as long as we're still on here, can you do me a favor? Can you look up Carlos Hyde's stats from last year real quick?
Carlos Hyde. Didn't he? Yeah. Carlos Hyde. In 2019, he had 245 carries for 1,070 yards, averaged 4.4 with 6 touchdowns.
Yeah, I do think only with David Johnson being more of a factor in the passing game. I mean, a season like that is very plausible, right? Where he's not overly productive, but he just gets a tons of touches.
100%, extremely plausible.
And in a standard league, Carlos Hyde wasn't that bad. The problem is we all play in PPR leagues these days, and he has nothing to do in the passing game. David Johnson should be more productive in the passing game. So, I don't know. It's easier to play well when you got a good quarterback. So, I mean, that's one good thing for him.
Definitely. I mean, he's in a better spot than he's been. Houston has been solid, man. Like, even without Hopkins, like, you take him off their team, it's not like they're like a trash team. They've still got good pieces. They've got Deshaun Watson. That means a lot for David Johnson. That's why if he's healthy, he could be productive. If he's healthy and not awful anymore, he could still be productive because he's in a good spot. He's got a great quarterback to play with.
Yeah, I definitely think this is a guy that we may get back on here and talk about a couple months down the road after we talk about training camp and we see what he looks like and things like that. There's going to be more information that comes out, but I wanted to kind of get the ball started early on him and just kind of get some of those ideas out there. Thought it was worth mentioning. Once you kind of go through the numbers a little bit, and I know for like you're kind of like, man, is he any good? And I bet you there's a lot of people out there in that same boat that are like, oh, it's David Johnson, David Johnson, David Johnson. And all of a sudden you look and you're like, man, he just really hasn't been very good for 3 years now, including the injury, of course.
Yeah, and people don't really, a lot of people at least, especially in year-long leagues, don't like to look at the numbers that deep. They just, oh, it's David Johnson, and they're cool with it.
Yeah. So something that would scare me if I was thinking about drafting him is if all of a sudden another running back shows up on this team.
Oh, hell yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if all of a sudden, again, like I mentioned Jamal Williams in Green Bay, he's clearly on the trading block, right?
I just can't really see it though because like of what we talked about with Bill O'Brien. Like I just feel like he's attached to him. They're like Siamese twins at this point.
Sure, I don't disagree with you, but in the NFL these days, a lot of teams like to have 2 running backs, and I like Duke Johnson, but he ain't running the ball between the tackles.
That's true.
So, I mean, I'm not shocked if I was going to say Carlos Hyde. It seems like another kind of guy that could be there. Where did Hyde end up? Did he sign with anybody?
I still don't think he's out there.
Like, if all of a sudden Carlos Hyde is back on the Texans, that would terrify me away from David Johnson because these guys are, at this point, probably pretty similar runners of the football.
I agree. I can't see it, but I don't disagree.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised if they get another. I don't think they're making a splash. I don't think they're going out and making like a major trade for somebody else. But if all of a sudden they're like, you know what, we need another viable RB2 in modern day NFL, it wouldn't like flabbergast me, I guess.
It wouldn't flabbergast me, but that's true with any team. I mean, I think that they're going to go in with. I have no idea if they have like a third string back or anything.
Not
like
really.
That.
I mean, the guy that they got on there, I think, has 5 career touches.
They didn't draft anyone.
Yeah, I mean, I was just looking at their current depth chart, and there wasn't much on there to get excited about.
I don't doubt that.
So I think you're looking at David Johnson taking a lion's share of the touches as far as running the ball goes, and then Duke Johnson coming in the passing game. 3rd and 8, I think you see Duke Johnson a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, guys, we thought we'd talk it over. Next up, we'll be talking DK Metcalf later on today or potentially tomorrow. Thumbs up is always appreciated. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, guys.